I'm joined now by embroidery artist Deb Washler. Deb, thank you for being here. I can't wait to talk about your work because, as we discussed earlier, it's not your grandma's embroidery.
It is not.
Not
no.
that there's anything wrong with grandma's embroidery, but
Yes.
what you do is super cool. But I want to talk about how you got to that point. You've had a whole life full of art.
I have, yes, yeah. So I fell in love with art as a kid. I think that's where a lot of artists will say it starts. You know, you're the one doodling kind of in the notes while you're going through school. And then I was fortunate enough to study art in college at St. Francis. And from there, it's been quite the journey along the way.
Now, I read that you considered going to grad school and teaching and then realized that wasn't, you know, going to be your path. At what point did you discover embroidery? Because I know that even career-wise, it didn't come up for a while.
No, because I spent a long time in nonprofits and helping other artists. So for me, the embroidery was interesting. I always loved fabric. But I never really did anything with it because I didn't really want to make clothes necessarily. I wasn't exposed to that a lot. My mother sewed, but it was more like quilts and things like that here and there, not consistently. But I loved fabric and I loved the idea of thread. And actually, someone I worked with, Suzanne Galaska, shared some images one day. She ran across with some artists, and it was thread work, and it was a different way of using thread. And so I started looking at that, and then I had another friend who unfortunately his mom had passed, but he was cleaning out her craft room. And he had these huge boxes of thread, like giant. And he's like, hey, do you want to buy a box of thread? So like any good artist who collects everything and anything, sure, I'll buy a box of thread. So then, of course, I have this big box of thread, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do with it? And I started remembering some of those images.
Right.
And so the first thing I did was a self-portrait of myself as like a tool. So it's essentially painting with thread, and I loved it. A lot of people look at it and say it looks really tedious, but I find it very relaxing and calming. And it's nice because I think a lot of artists would say this. You know, I studied graphic design, I worked in photography, and so many things are digital now. And I work on a computer all day, and everything else I do is on a computer. And so when it came to art, I didn't want to do that on a computer. I wanted something that was, you know, in my hands.
Tangible, sure.
Yeah.
How did you learn how to, first of all, the fact that your first project is a self-portrait is fairly
Go
huge.
big or go home.
I guess so, yeah. How did you even learn how to do it?
It's like painting or drawing. You're just using a different medium. So the first one, I don't show it a lot because it's got some puckers on the edges. You know, it's like, all right, I didn't stretch that fabric the way I should have. I probably should have done it differently. So a lot of it was, you know, looking at books and looking at different knots, but I don't even really use those traditional embroidery knots or techniques always. I use some of them, but for the most part, I try and do it based on what the image is. You know, so if the hair looks a certain way, that's how I want the thread to go in.
Yeah.
And try and layer it. And that's the fun part about doing a portrait. I don't always do portraits. They take a little longer. But the fun part with portraits is doing the hair and really being able to take thread, which is so texturized, and place that, and it really looks like hair.
So tell me about your process. When you are doing this self-portrait, we'll say, do you start by sketching it or?
A little bit. So the self-portraits I'll work off of a photo because they take so long.
Right.
So I'll take the image of the photo, and I've learned to just stretch my fabric like you would a canvas on a painting. So I don't tend to work on hoops like a lot of folks do. I actually stretch it like a canvas. And then sometimes I have to wear the white gloves as you're holding it and working with it so you don't get your fabric all messed up. But then I just sketch the outline of the piece, whatever it would be. So if it's a portrait, I would sketch the outline of the face and some of the larger points, like where the eyes go, where the nose goes. But the rest of it, you're really doing with the thread, just like you would do with a painting. You're looking at what colors you would want to place and doing it that way. So you're not drawing the whole thing out. You're just doing a loose sketch. And then I have, and part of what started this too, I did the self-portrait, but I have a little sketchbook at home that my daughter, who's now 12, at the time I think she was 6, I was sketching in it, just doing little fun drawings, and she was adding to it. And so we were doing a combination. Of course, I'll never give up that book, ever. So I've been taking some of those drawings, and then I sew them.
Oh,
so some of them, like when you see the images and it has like kind of like a little kid element, those are her elements from when she was 7, 8, all through there. So then I just sew those, and then I'm willing to sell those pieces, and then I keep the original book. So it's a combination of how I do it. And those are a little faster than the portraits would be.
Yeah. Okay, so you studied art and then kind of took a path where you were supporting other artists. Did you pursue any creative outlets on your own throughout that time?
Here and there. I mean, I had a website, which same website, but it was one of those free ones, you know, so I didn't really own it, right?
Yeah.
So I did things like that, and I was always sketching and drawing, but I didn't have a lot of time. You know, I have 2 daughters. You know, I had them while I was at ArtLink, working with the other artists and working a lot of hours there. So I didn't have as much time, probably. And then the interesting part is when I shifted careers, it opened up some capacity within that space. And so now I have a website. It's actually my name. I bought it. You can find it on Google. Such a new concept.
Yeah, right. Do you think that you were influenced by all of the artists you got to work with at ArtLink?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I was fortunate enough to work with one of the artists here. She does fabric as well, and her husband have their own website, and he has one style, which is painting, and she does drawings. So I mean, being around all of that creativity, it definitely influences the work you do, just like leading into embroidery. You know, that was seeing other artists work and seeing that medium used in that way, you know, inspired that.
You mentioned that in that first piece there's some puckering and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How has your work changed? Is the aesthetic the same, and just the technique has evolved?
I would say the aesthetic's the same. So as far as like the content and what I want to show, and maybe it's changed a little bit because of taking those doodles and kind of formalizing that a little bit more. But I would say the technique is really what's kind of tightened. I had a piece that was recently shown at ArtLink that has some really tight stitching in it, and a lot of folks think that it's done on a machine because of how I can layer the stitches in, and it's all by hand. Because to me, the machine kind of takes the fun out of it again. Again, it's that hand-eye and being able to create that piece.
So you mentioned that the self-portraits take a long time. Give me some context. How long is a long time? Because I'm thinking, man, your hands have to hurt.
No, my hands don't, but I will tell you I wear glasses now.
Okay.
I think the eyes might hurt a little bit more.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if I had, let's say, a week where all I did, you know, Monday through Friday was sew, I could probably have a small portrait done. So let's say, you know, like a small 5x7. I could probably have a small portrait done if that's all I did was sew. Now, if it became larger than that, then you're talking probably a couple of weeks to do that. And depending on how large it is, it could be a month.
So has this become your full-time gig?
No.
Do you wish it were?
I wish it were.
Yeah. I can imagine you could then spend a full week working on a portrait. Yeah. Do you have a favorite piece? I have to imagine it's one of the pieces, the collaborations with your daughter, but I don't know.
I don't know. That's kind of like picking a favorite kid,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I actually have 2 portraits of my daughters that would be probably my favorite. And again, it's the hair.
Yeah.
You know, there's one with my oldest that just big blonde hair, which was so much fun to sew.
Yeah.
But I don't know that I think it changes. Because sometimes it's the colors. You know, I did one that I loved the colors. It was like bright reds and turquoise.
Do you ever worry that you aren't going to, that what's in your head isn't going to come out in the piece?
No, something will come out. It may not come out exactly like you first thought it. I think it's anything like life. You have an idea in your head, but then as you work through the process of expressing it, it's going to change, and it should. You know, I don't think any of us are so concrete that exactly what we thought is exactly what was produced. I think there's nuances within there.
I can imagine, at least my thought process is, it's not like paint where I can paint over it.
No.
You know, it's once those stitches are there, they're there.
They're kind of there, yeah.
Yeah, so that to me would be intimidating. What gets you excited to get up in the morning?
The thought that I'll have time to draw.
So it's drawing that you are...
Yes, because that's the first step.
Yeah.
First step is you have to kind of sit down and lay it out.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I have lots of different sketchbooks, so a lot of times I'll flip through those. But it depends. I mean, some days I haven't sewn in a little while. I haven't sewn in probably about a month. So I actually have a piece started so I can start needle and thread. So with the holiday coming up, I will have some time. And so that's my goal, is to actually do more sewing, because I've been working on drawing for a while. So shifting gears. So I would say it changes each day because it's almost like, what have you done for the last month?
Yeah.
And what have you missed?
And what is your favorite part of the process?
I kind of like all of it. But the relaxing part is the sewing
That is fantastic.
and picking out the colors.
Is there a difference between thread and embroidery floss?
There is. So it's technically embroidery floss.
Okay.
Yeah, I always just call it thread.
Okay.
Painting with thread sounds better than painting with floss. Sounds a little bit like flossing your teeth or like dental work.
Yes.
So painting by thread sounds nicer. But if you're using coupons at stores and they say it's for thread, it is not for embroidery floss.
What a great tip.
I know, it's such a letdown too.
Well, I have to tell you that I cannot say I will be running out to buy any floss, embroidery floss
Yes.
soon, because what you do is fascinating, and I don't think I would have any talent for it whatsoever.
You might surprise yourself.
I just might, and you would be the person I would ask to teach me. Deb, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. Keep at it because your stuff is really cool.
Thank you very much.
For more information, visit debwashler.com.
Arts in Focus on PBS Fort Wayne is funded in part by